It's an absolute pleasure and honor for us to be able to talk to everybody here. My name is Calvin Luk. I'm the project manager for Jockey Club Design Institute for Social Innovation. Can we show the slides, please? Yep. Yeah, next, please. Yep. Okay. Don't let the fancy name social innovation deter you from what I'm going to show you. Although it's going to be as inspiring as every other speakers in the series, I'll introduce you a few approach that we have undertaken to achieve more or less very similar objectives and approach that the ISO standard is going to achieve in making a smart multi-generation neighborhood. Since we call Design Institute for Social Innovation, we do use design tools to help to trigger social innovation. And one of the design tools is design thinking method. So again, I emphasize that's not the only method that I use, that we use, but it is one of the means that we use to cultivate and nurture social innovators in our city, and also convert our academic impact into some social changes. Now that reflects very much in what Sam of U3A has said. We look for long-term system changes, long-term strategic changes that policymakers will discuss with us, will listen to us, and will start the dialogue to let those changes happen. Next slide, please. In introducing to a perspective that we're looking at, I would like to introduce a new term to you called double aging. Not many of you heard of this term. This term is a bit unique, although it doesn't have much academic theoretical framework being worked on it. But this term has been developed by the local government here in Hong Kong about 2 or 3 years ago. The phenomenon is pretty straightforward. With the aging population, you can see on the left-hand side, and at the same time with the aging building, like Mr. Orr has said a while ago, the built environments keep aging. And how do we cope with the livelihood or the living standard of the older people that are living in this environment? The first double aging map was produced by the University of Hong Kong. You can see below. And the phenomenon is overwhelming. Next slide, please. The combined impact of the double aging. Next slide, please. Yeah. If you can see the little drawings little photos on the right-hand side, it is typically how older people live in Hong Kong, whether they live in their own apartments or live in little elderly people's home, older people's home. They are being cramped into very small spaces with little access to nature, sunlight, let alone to services. Next slide, please. And therefore, I want to introduce to you a scheme that we have developed in a very old estate where most of the young people has left already. There, an estate is called Lycock Estate. The young people has left, and all the old people was staying behind. And once upon a time, the podium you can see marked with the dotted line was a thriving commercial shops and restaurants and all that. But now it's all being emptied and replaced by 150 bed older people's home. Now, how would that would sound really depressing, isn't it? An old estate with another 150 more older people living in the same estate. But we took advantage of the scheme and converted it into something meaningful. Next slide, please. Now, apart from putting all the necessary ingredients, I think there's many experts here already, so I don't go into detail. Sensory gardens, wandering paths, therapeutic workstations, and all that. Horticultural. One of the most important thing is we try to turn around this very unusual phenomenon of double aging into a new scheme in which we will provide activities and multi-generation activities for not just the residents of the older people's home, but also for the carer, for the family, and the residents of Lycock Estate. So the soft program was being initiated by the older people's home operators. But the most important part is we managed to get the agreement of the housing authority to try to break the barrier between using public spaces to be shared by the residents of the older people's home as well as by the public residents of the Lycock Estate. So this is something that we refer to as system changes that we would like to see in the future in a vertical city in Hong Kong. Next slide, please. So our collaboration model is pretty much the same as the other work that other people has done. One thing is we keep using our academic researchers to inform an evidence-based design practice. At the same time, this practice will in turn, the outcome of this practice will in turn inform our researchers how to and where to look at in terms of improving the lives of these people. And at the very end, I will show you 3 examples of the forum that I've collected in the past 3 years to showcase how we, in this part of the world, make a little bit difference to the scenario of the smart multi-generation neighborhood. The first example, I'm closing now. First example is, next slide, please. The first example is from China, where we are looking at using big data to accomplish a whole system of fall prevention and home modification. Next slide, please. And the second example is from Taiwan, a small city where, interestingly, there's a surplus of housings and old people and young people doesn't really like to mix. So then they were experiments to try to get these people to work despite of the cultural difference, which is very different in Asia cities than other cities, we managed a very, very cohesive community and they do get a new sense of home over there. Next slide, please. And the last example was actually drawn from the Australian organization called the Centre for Social Innovation. And they actually, the public administrators or public commissioners did a co-design workshop with the people work and live in neurobehavioral units to reduce the violent behavior of the residents. They designed the places together. So we see this is the beginning of how policymakers and general public can work together of how to make the best use of this health infrastructure to improve the livelihood of the older person. So in closing, next slide, please. In closing, I would very much like to congratulate AAA on the making of this ISO standard, which we believe it is critical, especially if the involvement of Asian countries can also take part in a more active way, so that the ISO standard will truly become an ISO standard for global users. And we will look forward to work with everyone on that. Thank you very much, Ian. Thank you.
I'm an architect and I specialise in designing places for people to live. So first slide, please. So designing for the future involves learning from the past, and getting feedback from people who live in the homes we design is a crucial part of planning newer and even better places to live. There's so much to think about, and designing for generations to come is a great responsibility. If we can design places with communities which can adapt and accommodate changing needs while supporting health, well-being and active, agile aging in beautiful surroundings, I think we will have done a good job. Here's a vision for an intergenerational place to live in the centre of Copenhagen, for older people living alongside students with space for grandchildren to visit and in a lively, sociable, safe place. Next slide, please. A bit of a contrast here. When I visited this older sheltered housing block on a cold November morning, I was delighted to meet this group of older residents having their morning coffee and cake outside. Well wrapped up, they were chatting away, and they told me they meet up every day in rain, snow or sun. They even had their Christmas lunch outside. What they really needed was a more robust gazebo to shelter. Otherwise, they were pretty happy with their arrangements and said they felt healthier and happier as a result. It doesn't take too much to create a little more space outside and for older people to have a chance to be together. Sometimes small changes make a big difference. Next slide, please. Repurposing existing buildings is something we've always done. Old buildings can have a future too. We transformed these 1930s flats in central London over 30 years ago, co-designed with the existing tenants as requested by the owner, the then Prince of Wales. Jockey House suffered from cold, damp, no central heating or insulation, but it had a strong community. It's now a thriving multi-generational community. We remodeled and insulated the building, making accessible flats for older people with lifts, wider circulation and new balconies, and creating maisonettes at ground floor for families. There are front and back gardens where you can talk to neighbours over the fence, courtyards and balconies where you can meet up. Community room is for everyone to share. Next, please. This co-housing scheme at Forge Bank, Lancaster by EcoArt, shows there's more space for people if you keep cars out of the centre of the scheme. The main street is a place to sit out and meet neighbours outside the communal kitchen and dining room. There's a mix of young families and older people sharing more facilities such as laundry, guest bedroom, cars and collective food purchase. Next, please. Marmalade Lane by Mole Architects similarly keeps cars out, so there's more space to enjoy being outside, meet neighbours and share activities. There are houses for families and flats for older people, with a common house where people can share meals, childcare, work. Next, please. Our net zero carbon multi-generational scheme at Hannam Hall is popular with downsizers who enjoy the highly sustainable design with adaptable houses. There's a bedroom at ground floor if you need it. And the rest of the living space can then become upstairs, or you can reverse it. It's very flexible. The green outside spaces are interactive. And again, there are plenty of places for all people of all ages. Front gardens, balconies, shared spaces, play spaces, greenhouses, and even orchards and allotments. Next, please. For Beech Tree Place in South London, we've gathered all our experience about what makes a successful, healthy and sociable place to live, one that can adapt and change for people as they get older. We've co-designed it with a group of older residents who are living at Beech Tree at the moment. We're quadrupling the density from 25 two-storey flats to nearly 100 homes. Large adaptable flats for the original group of older people and other flats for families and younger people, all affordable rent or shared ownership. We think a successful lifetime neighbourhood is a diverse one. Younger and able people support older and less able, as well as being their friends and neighbours. As Lord Best said earlier today, walking and wheeling are good for us. And when I first visited site, I was alarmed to see two people in wheelchairs trying to navigate the impossible slopes and crossing while avoiding speeding cars on the gyratory that runs in front of the site. So as part of the works, we're calming the traffic on this busy road and planting trees, making it much safer and pleasant to cross the road and get to Sutton town centre opposite, or the neighbourhood, walking, cycling or wheeling. Next, please. So Beech Tree Place has all the ingredients of a sociable and sustainable community, which will encourage activity and interaction, promoting health, well-being, support for older people, as well as the whole community. There are individual balconies with views out, communal gardens, roof gardens for the older people's block, all with places to grow food, flowers, plants, all year round, cultivating a neighbourhood that cares. Next, please. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And that is a plug for Caroline's book, available now at all good bookstores, right? Yes. And she'll sign it for you next time she's in the UK.
Absolutely.
Thank you very much. Before we go to Nicole in Malaysia, I'd like just to turn to Nick, who I've been asking to keep his eye on things, just to give us a quick snapshot on your take on where we're at. What have you got?
Well, there's a huge amount of snippets from the various speakers that we've had, and perhaps almost like a match of the day edited highlights, really. So apologies for
it's not even half time.
Exactly. So Mac, that absolutely stellar pathfinding, not path following, I think is an absolute resonating point. terms that we're actually now starting to see in picture form of living labs and co-designing. I think we're now getting a flavour, and Norway really does resonate for a lot of people. I think Lord Best's point with regard to progress is and has been made around the accessible standards now being legislated for in terms of lifetime homes. That's a real positive. Tor's point with regard to people's happiness, they're happiest when they live together in a village community. We must never forget that. Sam from the University of Third Age, buy things because we want them, not because we need them. And that resonates through so many aspects in terms of marketing and business models, etc. And then, of course, David's point with regard to older people have futures and ambitions, not just memories and histories. And that's a telling off for each and every one of us, if we're honest. And then, lastly, the point from China with regard to, Hong Kong, with regard to double aging. That is, again, another real step up in terms of just the size of the problem, the aging population. But actually, when you combine that with the aging property, it's the size of the problem, but then also the size of the opportunity.
Thank you all for having me. Hello from Malaysia. Can I have the first slide, please? So yes, this is our tagline, making cities livable together. And that means everyone has a role to play in creating better cities. And that includes people from both young and older generation. And why am I here? I'm going to be talking about urban regeneration approach to build better and more inclusive cities. I'll be talking about placemaking and how to create better public realm. And I'll head into public grants a little bit and to show, why public grants. Next slide, please. Next slide. Just a very quick introduction of what Think City is. We are a impact organization looking to make cities better, more resilient, more people-friendly. We are a subsidiary of Khazanah Nasional, which is the investment arm of Malaysia. Next slide, please. And this is our approach to create better cities. If I could direct your attention to B, that is our process, discovering a space, ideating what are the solutions for the issues that we have discovered, and prototyping, piloting. You don't go in and do big projects, and because those are very costly. You do catalytic projects, small, and that will get the ball rolling. And if that pilot project is well, then you implement it properly. And if the implementation doesn't work, then you relook into the discovery and ideation and all over again. And if that really works, and you replicate it from one place to another. But bearing in mind, it's not one size fits all. There is a lot of tailor making, tailoring it to certain places depending on where you are. Next slide, please. So public realm improvement. Next slide, please. This is our approach to strategic placemaking. You have these three bubbles there. That is the public realm improvement, space activation, and then management. All this plays an important role in creating good public spaces. And good public spaces are meant for all to use, not just the arts community or the creative community or the sports community. Everybody gets to use public space. Next slide, please. And this is our 7 principles of placemaking. Is very aligned to the guidelines of the report that was produced by AAA. It's pretty much almost similar. That this is like the process to those guidelines. Next slide, please. And our approach to inclusive community engagement. This is what we do in Think City. This is our value, which is doing a lot of community engagement. And what we mean by community engagement is a lengthy process. You do a lot of engaging with the people, understanding what they need. For example, this is a park. It is a flea market. If you lose anything, this is where you get to buy them back from. But this is a lost opportunity space in this area. And being in Penang, which is Georgetown World Heritage Site, there are a lot of older people that are living in the area. And they use this space, they walk around this place, they do Tai Chi in this place, but it looks like this. So next slide, please. After engaging with both the vendors and the people who live in the area, we created a green pocket park. And this is the biggest green pocket park in Georgetown World Heritage Site. And it's not just a pocket park that is active that looks like this. It is also used by people from various communities. The festivals will come here and set up as a festival site. Before implementing this entirely, what we did was we got the landscape architect to try around in a wheelchair to see whether if it's wheelchair friendly or not. And we got people from the blind community, visually impaired community, to see how the tactiles can be placed to make sure that it is safe for them to use. So most of the time, it doesn't look like this. It's actually quite passive. It's a passive park where community use to sit around, engage with the people in the community, people with their friends. There are groups who goes there and does Tai Chi in the morning. There are also groups that goes there for yoga in the evening and in the weekends. So it doesn't usually look like this. This is where this photo was taken when there was a festival. But most of the time, it's a very passive place. But so what I'm trying to lead to is that when creating a public space, it doesn't have to be active all the time, although it's called space activation. But the importance of it is that you get community to use the space as how they like to use it. And it can also function as multi-use space where different communities can come and use. So we like to see this as a place where all people can come together. Whether I think the term here is multi-generational neighborhood. It is a multi-generational neighborhood in this area. You got people who have lived here for the past 50 years, and you got new businesses here who have just set up, and you got tourists here, and you got young people who goes to school around the area who uses this park. And next slide, please. Just to touch on cultural mapping and why it is important. How we got to that part was we had our team members gone down to the ground, understanding the behavior of the space, understanding how people use the space, not just the space, but the neighborhood around it. So we had to map it out. How do they use it in the evening? How do they use it in the afternoon? How do they use it in the morning? And that's where you have interventions that are not entirely that will not throw them from how they usually use the space. You want them to feel like they belong to the space. You want them to feel that, this space is not so different that they wouldn't be able to connect with the space. I think that's very important. And next slide, please. I just want to touch a little bit on public grants. I know my time is up, but what we need to know is that we can't do everything on our own. So what we do is we use public grants to empower community inclusion. So what we did is that we put a call out to the people, to public, giving them 3 problem statements on what are the issues in the area. And that's how we crowdsource ideas. And it's also very important for public grants to function this way, because that's when you capacity build what are the issues in the area to the public. And that makes them think, that spurs thinking, spurs creativity as well. And that is inclusive urban renewal in what we do. Just to close it out, next slide. We believe that, in successful placemaking, it is the power of small. You don't do big, huge projects. You do small catalytic projects. And what is very important is that you put people in the heart of the solution. And with that, thank you very much for having me.